Visiting a city for the first time and not sure what to do? A walking tour is a great place to start. Top Dog Tours is in Boston, Toronto, Philadelphia, and New York City. To book a walking tour, you can visit us at topdogtours.com and be sure to check out our social media accounts for offers and discounts. Hi, I'm Nicole Kelly, and this is She Brew in the City. And today I am talking to Elana Frank, who is the founder and CEO of the Jewish Fertility Foundation. How are you doing today, Ilana?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, this is a pleasure. I just moved, so I look terrible today. So I don't know if we're going to be using the video on this.
Don't knock yourself. Come on.
No. It's because I can't find my makeup. I don't know what I did with my makeup, and I try to judge myself up a little bit, but I don't think that's happening today.
You look great.
Thank you. So I usually start by asking my guests about where they grew up, their Jewish upbringing, if they had any, those kind of things. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I have an Israeli father and a Yeki or German mother. My dad is he's an immigrant. He came 48 years ago. I went to Jewish day school. We were part of a synagogue, not super observant, but very, very traditional growing up.
Okay, what part of Israel is your father from?
He grew up in Bat Yam.
Oh,
and
okay.
Then his family moved a little bit more north.
Okay, and why did he end up coming to the United States?
Kind of crazy, especially with everything going on now, but he was in an accident in the army and was in a coma for 3 days.
Oh.
This is the famous story that he woke up and he spoke English. I'm not exactly sure how much of that is true, but from that incident, he knew he wanted to travel to America, get his degree here, and he did, and he never left.
Oh, wow. And your mom is from Germany or of German descent?
No, German descent. She grew up in Washington Heights, New York.
Oh, that's a little bit north of where I am right now.
Ooh,
yes.
And her dad was a butcher. They needed butchers in the South, so she came in high school.
Okay.
Down to Atlanta.
Okay. Do you know what part of Germany your family's from?
Oh, Lord. So my grandfather was from actually Belgium.
Okay.
And then my grandmother, I don't know exactly in Germany where she was from. Horrible. My grandmother came, who's still thankfully around, 89 years old. She came from when she was like 3. And then my grandfather has a horrible Auschwitz. Parents shooed him away when he was 13 and ended up coming to America by himself.
Oh my goodness.
Crazy stories. I have a 13-year-old. It's crazy.
Yeah, no. So you're a 4G, I guess, would be if your great-grandparents were in the Holocaust.
Yeah. So, yeah. What it does to our generation, that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Yes, I just got into the program at Gratz for Holocaust and Genocide Studies for my master's, and I'm very interested in the concept of generational trauma. I've had a couple guests who are 3Gs, and there's a class I can take that has to do with the effect of, relatives being in the Holocaust and the family unit, and something I'm super interested in. I've taken
bipolar.
Yes.
My family has serious bipolar. We lost my aunt to suicide 10 years ago. She was the one who was as interested, and I really think something in our DNA shifted, and it's like it's in us.
Yeah.
It's really sad and interesting.
All right, so let's jump to something maybe a little bit happier.
I hope so.
Yeah, you spent some time in Israel yourself. Can you talk a little bit about what brought you over there and what it was like living there at the time?
Yeah, so we're talking now almost 16 years ago. My husband and I met, we got married, and it was like in 2009, recession going on, some hard economic times in America. My husband had just moved from Israel in Jerusalem. He's by way of Chicago, American. And I was like, Jason, let's go to Israel. Like, we were having a hard time figuring out our place. We had met in Atlanta, and we didn't like Atlanta at that time. And I said, let's do it. He's like, I'll go back, but I won't go to Jerusalem or Tel Aviv. We're going to be like pioneers. We're going to be Israelis, like the olden days. And so I was like, okay, whatever. And so we actually lived in the north. And we were part of Nefesh B'Nefesh, a program that helps immigrants move. And we lived in the mountains for 5 years. Like,
Oh my gosh.
we were Israeli, like really living not the, Anglo life.
Yeah. That's crazy. Why did you end up coming back to the United States?
So we actually had a good life in Israel. We both had jobs in our field. I mean, we had 2 cars. We bought a house. That's a big deal for immigrants.
Yeah.
Many Israelis don't have 2 cars. They aren't buying homes. But my husband works in the casino industry, and he got recruited back to America, and we made our way back.
And you ended up back in Atlanta, yes?
So, no. So, by way of Atlantic City.
Okay.
I came back with a 1-year-old and a 6-week-old. He didn't even have his shots yet. Long story. But we ended up near Atlantic City and then Cherry Hill. He got recruited again in the Bahamas. And I said, I love you, but I'm not moving to the Bahamas. Even the Chabad rabbi there, I called him and he's like, what kind of Jew are you? I'm like, we're like somewhat observant. He's like, don't come. He's like, if you want to raise your kids in like an observant lifestyle, like Bahamas is not the place. And so he commuted for a while from Atlanta.
Oh my gosh, that's a commute.
Yes, it is.
But you ended up in Atlanta where you started from.
Yeah. Nice to be around family.
Yes, it's definitely a good thing. So speaking of, coming from Israel with 2 small children, the main thing that I want to talk to you about today is your journey with infertility and you starting this great organization. So I want to start out by talking about your personal story involving infertility.
Yeah, well, Israel is where my husband and I went after we got married and thought we were going to have 1 million babies. Mm-hmm. And it just did not go as planned. We were also new immigrants navigating socialized medicine in Israel, figuring out how the system worked. And we had already been married about a year by the time we moved to Israel. And we were not using birth control. And after like 3 months of really trying, I didn't understand what was going on. Went to the gynecologist. Quickly, she put me on Clomid. Nothing was happening. I thought I was going to get pregnant right away. I was so excited, month after month. I remember my aunt is Israeli. I remember my father's Israeli. So we would go out with my cousins and all their kids and regularly. And she would tell me, Ilana, what's going on? Like, why aren't you having kids? And I'm like, I didn't even know what to say. And I remember she's like, do you know how to have sex? Like,
wow.
Do you need to go on a vacation? They're Israeli. Do you need to go on a vacation and relax? Like all the things that are the worst things to say.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe I don't know how to have sex. Like, I really was like, am I doing it wrong? I don't know. Like, what is going on? Ultimately, she found us a doctor and I trusted her. He was a professor, which is a big deal in Israel. And I wasn't part of his insurance coverage, but we're American, we're used to writing checks. So we would go to his house, his private office at night, which is not so uncommon, but he started doing IUIs or like the turkey baster method. Mm-hmm. My husband would go to the bathroom, do his business, come out with sperm. He would look under the microscope in his house. And then I would get on the table, a proper doctor's table, and he would put it in me. Month after month, we would write a check, but he never checked my body. He never did any medical procedures to check my body. And we felt like after a while something was weird, but we wanted a baby. And ultimately, after time, wasted time, we're like, let's get a second opinion. And we did, and my tubes are blocked. I am not going to get pregnant through an IUI. If anything, I could have an ectopic pregnancy, which is scary.
Very dangerous.
And it was such wasted money and wasted time. And I didn't know any better. I mean, at that time, there was like no resources online. There was Baby Center, which I couldn't connect to. And ultimately, I was able to find this great doctor. And because I lived in Israel and because they value families and reproductive access and they have socialized medicine, I was able to do IVF for free and ended up with 2 children through the process.
Wow. IVF is extremely expensive. It's kind of crazy that it is no cost in Israel, and it's such a contentious issue right now, even with it costing like $30,000 to get IVF. I took Clomid to get pregnant with my daughter, and the pregnancy that unfortunately ended back in July. So I have a little bit of insight into kind of what you went through, but I knew going into it that there were problems because I don't ovulate regularly. So even before we got pregnant, I was kind of mentally prepared to go through the whole process. But thankfully, Clomid worked the first month for my daughter. Yeah. So, like the base level, the lowest level of fertility treatments is what I was on. But it's scary, like facing that and not knowing what's wrong. And I think it's something that affects so many people. So this organization you started is amazing. Can we talk about what inspired that and how that all happened?
Yeah, I mean, listen, in Israel, it was free, which is huge. It's tremendous.
Yeah.
Also, I went through over a year of having to go to work where I worked at an immigrant youth village. It was a religious community. I mean, it's Israel also, so they have no filters.
Yes.
And people were like, and I was gaining weight. I was on medications while I was doing IUI. Mm-hmm. Like, people were literally like asking me, number one, are you pregnant? Because I was gaining weight. Mm-hmm. What's going on? Like, I would really not wait so long. Like, people love to give their opinions. And like, I didn't know what to say. It was really hard. It was super hard with my husband and our marriage. He wanted to make me happy and get me a baby. And I was broken. Like, I didn't know what to do. And, just connecting with people back in America, like who are all having their babies and, not wanting to say something to me because they didn't know. I wasn't really talking about it, but like, I also wasn't pregnant. Like who gets married at my age and doesn't want to have a family in our community, like right away? That's just wasn't who I was. And I was I didn't know how to talk to my family, like my family back in America. So even though it was amazing what Israel offered, when I came back to America with 2 babies, I was sitting in a baby pool at a JCC with some old friends from growing up. And they had one person had twins, another person had one child, and we started talking about IVF, and they're like, yeah, these are my $80,000 twins. These are my, this is my child I spent so much money on.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I did IVF too, and it was free. And just hearing this sparked an idea. We're almost 10 years ago now. And I was like, wow, I've been in nonprofit my whole life, fundraising and doing community organizing and coalition building. Wouldn't it be great if I could help these people financially? And that's kind of where the idea started.
That's crazy. $88,000. They must have gone through 2 or 3 rounds if that was.
Just because you do IVF does not guarantee a child at the end. You have to, sometimes there's surgery involved, sometimes, lots of things can be part of the process.
Yeah, I think that's a common misconception that IVF works 100% of the time because even during egg retrieval, might not get enough. Mm-hmm. There's so many different steps to the process that there's something that I don't want to say go wrong, that could not go perfectly, that would not, the outcome would not be a baby. I think that's a huge misconception a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Or with any fertility treatment, but definitely with IVF. So do you have statistically, just in case people are curious, what percentage of families experience some form of infertility?
So when I started in the biz, it was 1 in 8. And we would always, nationally, so we would always, our doctors would share with us that actually within the Jewish community, it's a little bit higher, closer to 1 in 6.
Really?
For various reasons. Listen, like, we're genetically a smaller population, we're marrying each other, there's some genetic factors involved. Also, we're a population that is educated. So we're going to college, we're going to grad school, then we're trying to get married and have babies. And unfortunately, biology does not wait, and those contribute to those factors. But actually, I think 2 years ago, the statistics changed. And nationally, the rate is 1 in 6.
Okay.
So still, I think in the Jewish community, it is more prevalent. But that's where we're at.
That's a pretty high number.
Yeah.
That's, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, my husband told me once that men are less fertile of this generation, less fertile than their grandfathers were for various reasons, because male factor infertility is also something that I think people don't realize. Usually, unfortunately, they blame the woman. There's something wrong with the woman, but the father also plays a little bit of a part in that as well.
It's actually like you break it into 4. There's female factor, male factor, there's unexplained, and then there's male and female don't mesh up together. So it's like 1/4, 1/4. So really it's really not a woman's issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to spread that information because, people tend to blame women for a lot of things, including this, which I think is incorrect and unfair. So going back to Jewish couples in particular, why do you think the infertility journey can be especially difficult for Jewish couples?
Yeah, so, and I'll correct you by saying couples because we do work with individuals and...
Okay, perfect.
Single moms by choice, even single dads by choice now. It's really a huge growing population. And, it's part of our culture. First of all, like starting with intended grandparents, like, no, when are we going to have the grandkids? Like, think about all the holidays that are coming up right now. What is Passover? Passover is telling your children the story of how we left Egypt. Everything in our culture, even if you're not super observant, we're a family-based culture. And the pressure's on. I mean, be fruitful and multiply, right? That's who we are. You were talking about the Holocaust. Like, it's our job to build back the Jewish community. But what if you can't? How does that feel?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So going back to JFF, what resources do you provide to those experiencing infertility or, as you said, choosing to be single moms or single dads by choice?
So we say on their path to parenthood. So we offer 3 main services.
Okay.
1 is financial assistance. 2 is emotional support, and 3 are educational trainings. So the first, financial assistance, money, really, really important. We offer 1 IUI grant of $1,000. Sucks you're going through this. Hug from the Jewish community. It is not needs-based. And then we offer up to two $10,000 grants. With all of the grants comes a discount of up to 20% from the fertility clinic in your community.
Okay.
And then we partner with local interest-free loan associations because even if you're getting our maximum grant and the clinic discount, like it's still not going to cover everything. So we really want to make it accessible. And then in terms of emotional support, we offer a peer-to-peer mentorship program, a Fertility Buddies program, which is now national, open to anybody anywhere in the U.S. And we offer local support groups as well as national peer-to-peer support.
You mentioned that the Buddies is nationally. I know that the clinics and you're in specific cities. So can you tell me for people listening, if they're interested in your organization, what cities you're currently in?
Sure. You're putting me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
No, I should know this by heart. I'm going to Jewish Fertility Foundation.
If you've got more than enough cities that you can't remember, then that's a good thing.
It's a good problem. So we are in specific communities nationally where we go really, really deep in those communities. But we also have a national program. So you are able to join for emotional support and education, regardless where you're living. All right, I'll give you the rundown. Atlanta, Birmingham, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Denver, Detroit, Greater DC, Maryland, DC, Virginia, Miami, Pittsburgh, and then national.
Wow. How long has it taken you to get to this many cities? The entire, like, the entire decade?
No, we started scaling. We wanted to really understand our services and our model. So we opened in 2015, and we started expanding, piloting in 2019.
Okay.
Once we figured it out, like for the past 4 years, we've been growing.
That's a pretty quick expansion for an organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a wonderful process. Also, I am excited to take 2025, our 10th year, to take a pause. We want to go and understand we figured out the model of going into a city. Are there other opportunities to help more people nationally? And we've been a direct service organization for all these years. In order to grow and help more people, we need to also be a fundraising organization.
Yes.
A fundraising engine.
Yes.
So that is the 2025 pivot and focus in order for us to really make a deeper impact. I have a dream of helping people from a financial perspective to really grow our impact and how much money and how many people we're helping.
It's nonprofits cost a lot of money to run. I took some extension courses at UCLA a long time ago, a nonprofit fundraising, and it is a whole machine to keep an organization running. You mentioned the Buddies program is available nationally. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is that we work a lot. We love our social workers. We love our therapists in-house. We have a program that we created. And the idea is that, listen, when you're going through this, sometimes you don't want to reach out to your close friends and family all the time. Maybe it feels a burden, or maybe you want somebody who just gets what you're going through. And so we created a program. It's not about the veteran, we call them, the person who's on the other side. It's about you, the person who's experiencing infertility and what you're going through. And so we try to match up somebody for this approximately year-long journey, and they can be anyone to you. Like you guys can kind of set your own boundaries and expectations. Are you grabbing coffee monthly? Are you talking on the phone weekly? Do you just need to text every once in a while? Do you want them to come to appointments with you? Like really understanding who they are and what they are. Ideally, the geography will be close to where you live, and the diagnosis should be similar. Gender should be similar. And now we have just opened it up nationally, meaning really in this wonderful world of the World Wide Web and Zoom and phone and texting. There are opportunities. I do think it's best to be local and have the opportunity to meet in person, but that's not available for everybody. We want to give an opportunity to those who are not in our communities to also benefit from this support. Yeah, no,
having gone through a loss in July, like under a very specific circumstance, I don't know anybody who's gone through what I went through. So it can be really helpful just to have someone, even for just like a check-in, who doesn't even need to talk about it, but they know what you're going through, so that you don't feel so alone.
You need to register now. Literally go to our website and just sign up for a buddy. Again, it's not selfish. It's like, we get it. And there are people who can really support you through this time.
Oh. So you talked about the different types of people who work with your organization. You mentioned doctors and social workers. What kind of team cohesive team works with the people who take advantage of your organization?
Sure. So the structure of our organization is we're a nonprofit, first and foremost. We have a board of directors. We work a lot with local volunteers. I have an executive committee, or executive team, I should say. And then in each of our locations, we have a local manager. The manager is not providing the direct services. What they're doing is they're introducing the client to the right services. So if they need to go meet a therapist at a support group, they're going to make sure that they have that information. If they're going to work with a volunteer for the Fertility Buddies program, they'll hook them up. And they help them through the grant application process. We have a financial qualifications committee that is assessing the grants from a financial point of view, and a medical advisory council who is working, number one, to keep us up to date with what's going on from the medical world. It's changing rapidly.
Yep.
And they're also looking at two things when we're considering offering a grant: the likelihood of pregnancy and the likelihood of having residual embryos or extra embryos to put in the freezer, because that process is less expensive. And then we love our graduate school social work interns. That's a program we started 9 years ago with different graduate schools in New York, in Georgia, all around. I think that's it.
Yeah. That's if someone was interested in, like you said, being a grad student volunteer, would they be, not volunteer, working as a social worker with your organization? Yes. Where would they find information on that? Yeah,
sure. So they probably would do it through their graduate program.
Okay.
They would need to develop that relationship. They have a coordinator, and we're open at this point to, outside of our, to talking with students. We really rely, right now we have 3. We really love working with them. I mean, it's a serious commitment, it's a serious job, and it's also part of their their curriculum in order to graduate from the program. But just they need to speak with their coordinator at their program.
Cool. So jumping to something a little more political, because, anything involving uteruses and babies has now unfortunately become political. What are your thoughts on regulations regarding fertility treatments? Because I know right now they really don't exist. And, we hear about sensationalized stories of a single sperm donor fathering hundreds of people. My husband had a guest on one of our tours that that is her father. It was the doctor who helped her mother get pregnant, was the father of hundreds of kids. And it leads to all sorts of problems and concerns. So what are your thoughts on having regulations within the fertility industry?
So Jewish Fertility Foundation is not a political organization. What we do is to make sure that our clients have access to information in order to make the best decisions. And so we really rely on American Society of Reproductive Medicine and Resolve to be in the forefront of working with decision makers. And, when everything was going on in February in Alabama and fertility clinics were closing, we actually have an office in Alabama. And I mean, the doctors in our clinics were calling us the night before they were going to have to shut their doors. Like, can you help us? What we very quickly were able to pivot and do is offer direct support. That's what we do. And make sure that the people who are currently going through their treatment could quickly come and pivot to Atlanta, right? Like, we didn't want to deal with everything going on. We're very solution oriented.
Okay.
What can we do? The next day, we got our local attorneys, on an Instagram with hundreds of people. This is the situation. We don't know what's going on. We know that even the doctors at this stage aren't returning phone calls because legally they don't know what's going on. And we just put information out there and keep our clients updated. And so that was very reactive. What we do today, we actually just got a grant from the Jewish Women's Fund of Atlanta to do just this. We want to be proactive in understanding, well, what are some of the states that are safer right now? Do people need to be moving their embryos? Should we not be creating embryos? There are lots of questions that are coming up. We follow the guidelines of ASRM and Resolve and the people who are doing the advocacy, but really work with our clients to share what's going on. And then one of the pieces that we're using some of our grant funds for is really testimonials. That's what reporters and newspapers have been really interested in, is really getting the word out that our community the fertility community, abortion is part of our language, unfortunately, even for very wanted babies and pregnancies and losses and, access to treatment and really just sharing actual human stories of family building is how we approach that space.
Gotcha. So I saw that your website has postpartum support resources. As me personally, as someone who's dealt with severe postpartum, I know how important this issue is. As a fertility organization, why do you think this is important to provide for families after the birth? Because really, on the surface, what it looks like you're focusing on is getting people pregnant. At that, then maybe that should be the end of it. So why do you continue resources after a pregnancy has started and has ended in birth?
I mean, we want to bring in healthy babies into the world, and we really promote genetic screening and organizations like JScreen. It's the same. How can you not support the family post-birth? Our work is in the middle and really trying to help families grow their families, but to not be able to pass along resources to our moms when there's real, postpartum, anxiety disorders that arise would be really scary for us. So it's very important for us to share resources, make sure that moms know it's okay and when they need to seek help and what other resources are available after.
And even beyond that, let's say, someone receives a grant from you, they have a successful birth. If they would like to continue to grow their family, are they able to come back to your organization?
Yeah, we do offer up to 2 grants, and we do support secondary infertility.
Can you explain what secondary infertility is?
Yeah, secondary infertility. So perhaps you even had, you had sex and you got pregnant with your first or second, and then all of a sudden you want additional children. We're happy, and you're not having success. We're happy to step in if needed.
Great. Your website also gives some tips on how to handle going to the mikvah during infertility. Can you talk a little bit about the mitzvah of going to the mikvah and why this might be difficult for those going through infertility?
Yeah, as somebody who observes family purity, lots of rules there. But when I was trying to get pregnant for all 3 of my children, I would go to the mikvah and ritually immerse once a month. And remember, I was trying to get pregnant for so many years. And it's exhausting and emotional. And every time I would go there as a reminder that I got my period and I'm not pregnant, it sucked. And to have people who perhaps didn't understand that as part of the mikvah community, it was really disappointing. We've done a lot of trainings for the observant community, which has been helpful and well received. But also, one of the things that we do that's so special for perhaps the non-Orthodox community or also the Orthodox community, is something we call the 9th month dunk. And there are certain cities that have community mikvahs where somebody who maybe hasn't ever been to the mikvah somebody in their 9th month can dunk for an easy labor and easy birth. And then anonymously following, somebody struggling with infertility can dunk right after them. And there's certain special prayers that have been created, really connecting you in this moment of hope. And it's a beautiful ritual. I did it when I was pregnant in my 9th month. I did it before I was pregnant. It really is just a moment where you can connect with all the matriarchs who struggled with infertility and kind of just feel hopeful.
Now that you're bringing it up, yes, infertility is a theme with the matriarchs. So it's something that I think has been addressed within Judaism for thousands of years. So what you're doing is continuing that. And it's a really beautiful thing. No. It's not new. It's just we have resources to assist with that. I don't know what we were watching, but I was thinking about, the millions of people who are never able to have children because the medicine didn't exist at the time, and was actually curious about like the population growth in regards to fertility treatments. I'm sure somebody's written a paper on that somewhere I could find.
I don't have an answer.
No,
Let me know.
I know it'd be interesting because I feel like historically it's like they never had children. For example, like a governor like George Washington and his wife never had children because the theory is that he had a childhood illness that made him infertile. Maybe if he was born, in 1993, that would have been different. So it's interesting that
there are great procedures to remove sperm right now.
Really?
Yeah. There are some there's a lot of innovation actually out of Israel.
Really?
Yeah, very interesting.
It makes sense that Israel will be kind of the innovator in that because, as we talked about, Jews and babies being a huge thing. So going back to the religious aspect of what your organization working with the clergy, you have tips on your site as well about how the clergy members can help people who are experiencing infertility. I think it is so important to be able to lean on clergy in difficult times. I love the clergy at my synagogue. And when we lost our baby in July, it was like one of the first things that we did was to reach out to our head rabbi. Have you found that most people aren't comfortable going to their clergy members, that the clergy is maybe not necessarily knowing what to say? Why provide tips, and additional support?
So yes to all of that. Yes, sometimes people do not feel comfortable going to their clergy. Sometimes people, we work a lot in the interfaith population, unaffiliated, like people don't have clergy to go
Gotcha.
to. And I think that in, the early days, we love our synagogues and the relationships we've created. Also, clergy are used to offering pastoral care. This is not something new to them. But there is a gap sometimes in the information they know to offer. And so, everything from like basic biology of making a baby is something that we try to really educate because it's not always basic, right? There are other, just speaking the language of the infertility, like what other alternatives there are, and most of them are totally fine in the Jewish community. Understanding perhaps what is helpful to say and what isn't helpful to say, and most importantly, knowing that there are resources out there and where to guide your audience is really important.
So I want to touch on two things you just mentioned. You say you work a lot with the interfaith community. So what are the, qualifications you have to apply? Because both partners don't have to be Jewish. How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So we accept the Reform movement's definition of who is a Jew.
Okay.
And so, one of the partners needs to be Jewish. Listen, you need to raise your kid Jewish. Whatever that means to you is fine with us. There is absolutely, background information that we ask for in terms of understanding what your thoughts are about raising this child. Like, we want to make sure that there is a Jewish continuity element to all of this. Mm-hmm. And I'm shocked. We just actually did a research project with a consulting agency about the impact that we're having within the interfaith population, who are mostly feeling isolated from the traditional Jewish community. And we're bringing them in at a really critical time in their life, providing them a Jewish experience, sometimes their first. And then, they're going on to really understand the Jewish community is there for them. We're introducing them to Jewish people, Jewish friends, other Jewish organizations. And the findings were really, really validating and fascinating and hopeful.
That's beautiful. Second thing you kind of touched upon, what not to say. So let's say I'm not going through infertility, but I know someone who is. What are some ways that people can support family and friends who are experiencing infertility, and what should they not say or do?
Yeah, I'd say we actually just did a national program last night that is recorded and on our website.
Amazing.
And we had clergy come. We had couples who experienced infertility. We had our male therapist who runs our national male support group. And, I think one of the themes of last night was like, sharing that you care, but then kind of backing off. And you can ask, like, is there a way that I can support you? Do you want me to just distract you during this time? Do you want to go to a movie and not talk about anything? Like for parents or like intended grandparents, stop asking me if I've, thought of X, Y, and Z. Of course I've thought of X, Y, and Z. Of course we're talking about it. And stop asking me where we're at in the process. Like one time you can say, I am here for you, whatever you need. I think like if you're a family member or friend, what are things that are triggering, like baby showers and brisses and kids' birthday parties, kids' birthday parties, people you love, like it can be really triggering. So what can you do in a moment like that? Except if they say, no, thank you, I'm going to opt out or sit out of this. If they end up going to one of these events, and you recognize they're having a hard time, you're the mom or the friend or the sibling, say, hey, do you want to come outside for a minute? Be really supportive. Check in. And it's okay if they don't respond. Texting is welcome. I mean, I'll turn it back to you. When you had your loss, what was helpful and what was not helpful?
I have friends that have consistently checked in on me, and none of them have children. And I feel like that's helpful because they're coming from a place of just being here for me, not from personal experience. And that's been very helpful. The clergy at my synagogue had great suggestions and, provided support, but also it's time. I mean, this isn't necessarily, something that would kind of cross over to infertility because time doesn't help with that. But, just things do get easier. After, I know you probably deal with a lot of people who have losses as well, So, grief is something you kind of just have to work through. And grief for anything, grief for infertility, grief for pregnancy loss, grief for a death of someone that you actually know. It's not, lean into it, I guess, is the way that I deal with it. I'd rather spend a week feeling sad and feeling than, for 5 years kind of have this weird thing hanging over my head, so that's my, 2 cents with that. So I'm a big reader. And if I was going through the process of going through, fertility treatments past what I did, I would want to look at books and do some research online. So other than your website, are there books and resources that you direct people to?
I mean, so I'm the opposite. That's not where I prefer, really asking questions.
Okay.
Working with doctors, first of all, to understand, are they the right expert for you? So there are doctors who are don't have the best bedside manner versus going to share everything with you. I like to do the research about that doctor. There's a great site called Fertility IQ where you can really learn about the doctor before you go. I also recommend, it's okay to interview 2 doctors. They're going to be with you for the long haul.
Yeah.
You need to trust them. So I don't know, this is just me personally. I prefer to trust the professionals than to come in with Dr. Google and be I want to do X, Y, and Z. In terms of understanding the emotional side, same thing. There are so many therapists in this space who are certified in third-party reproduction or reproduction. We want to make sure that they have the training. They don't just say they specialize in infertility. They really understand. And on our website, there's certain criteria that we look for. And then they're great now, podcasts, and they're great. I have a podcast, and they're great websites where you can really just learn. So I don't want to knock any books.
No, of course.
Over here, you'll see I have a whole list, and we really encourage that library of great. But there's also so much information coming out in other ways today that I would also look into.
I'm also a fan of trusting your doctors. I'm of the thought that if you don't trust your doctors, and what they say you should find another doctor.
And I'm not saying don't ask questions.
No, of course.
Advocate for yourself.
Of course,
but
lean
lean
into the medical professional. You know, if you because I know there's a lot of people who think they know better. Like, well, I saw this on the internet. Yes, but this person, this is their job.
But like, also, I was doing IUIs in the basement of this guy's house.
Yes.
Like, it was weird, and I should have. I wouldn't have known to ask the questions now, but there's so many resources today to kind of help you know what is sketchy versus not. And trust your gut. Like, when it comes to those things, trust your gut. If it feels icky, likely it is icky.
There's a happy medium, I think, between being informed and trusting your doctors.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your podcast. So what do you talk about and how did that end up happening?
Yeah, so I have really incredible conversations with people, not necessarily around their own infertility journey, but there's so much going on in the femtech space, which is the space where, like I was saying about like Israeli innovation. There's so much innovation happening today in the reproductive space. And that's my jam. I love hearing about anything related to even adoption, fostering, like new innovative ways to grow your family. And so we've had the opportunity to just have incredible speakers share what they're doing, how they're looking at things, and how they're really helping our community.
I love the idea that specific fertility innovations. I love that a lot of that's coming from Israel because I know, and hopefully a lot of people do, that a lot of tech in general comes from Israel. So that's why I think the idea of these banning Israeli products is really ironic as people are posting about it on their iPhones where the chips are made from. Yeah. It's just really funny to me. So if someone is interested in donating to JFF or getting involved as a volunteer, how would they go about that?
Yeah, go online. We make it very easy and accessible. We do operate because of our donors and our volunteer base. All the information, if you're in one of our specific locations, you can find our manager and staff information on our website. Reach out. I mean, we've met some of the best people, best donors, best volunteers, sometimes both in that way. Please just reach out or info at jewishfertilityfoundation.org.
Amazing. So this last part of the interview is what I like to call my version of the actor's studio. So these are short form questions, so you don't need to go into big explanations unless you want to. So the first question is what is your favorite Yiddish word?
Oh my God, I have like 3 boys right now. I'm trying to think. Sorry, hold on. Give me 1 second.
No.
I feel like my life revolves around poop, and I'm trying to be. But I like kvelling. Kvelling is when I really feel like somebody in my world has done something that just like melts my heart. I'll get away from the poop and just like be proud.
What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
I think Rosh Hashanah coming up next week. I think it's just, again, about hope and gratitude and looking forward and kind of analyzing the past year.
Which it goes along with what you do very beautifully. If you had a bat mitzvah today and you had a big party, what would the theme be?
Okay, my theme, can we just say, was telephones. I am not that girl. Like, I think it would be about paying it forward. I'm doing a course at a philanthropy training at my kids' school in 6th and 7th grade. And it's all about teaching our kids today about philanthropy. I don't care what interests them. It's understanding and figuring out what their passions are to pay it forward.
I love that. I love pay it forward. What profession other than your own would you want to attempt?
I want to be a philanthropist. I want to be on the other side. I want to have an actual foundation to be able to help people, help the people. That would be really fun.
If heaven is real and God is there to welcome you, what would you like to hear him say?
like you've done your best. Oh my God, you're gonna make me cry. Like,
It's very contemplative, that question, you know? It's,
yeah, like give me a hug and say you've tried.
So is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about, aspects of the organization, something about your personal story, your personal connection to Judaism, anything like that?
No, I think you've done great. I think really just making sure people who are listening, if they're, going through it, they're not alone. And if people on the other side want to support our cause, reach out.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. This was Nicole Kelly, and this is She Brew in the City.